Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Mayday Network. I'm Michelle Kinney. TGIF, I guess. Once upon a time, Friday was kind of the slow news dump, but no longer in the second term of Donald Trump. A story just broke in the Washington Post that honestly should not surprise any of us, yet it is still deeply, deeply shocking and disturbing. I just want to pull this up here. This is the front page of the Washington Post website right now. But below the digital fold is this story. Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, gave a spoken order to kill everybody in first Caribbean boat strike, officials say. Now, if we bring this back to the infamous video that the Democrats, the former intelligence and military veterans put out just a few days ago that has sent the Trump administration into a tailspin, threatening death and execution, investigations against Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, Alyssa Slotkin. It becomes much more clear now why they were freaking out. And this is purely speculative. I don't know this, but I can assume that these members of Congress and senators knew about this. And this is why they filmed this video. And I'm just going to play this again for anybody who missed it the first time.
Senator Alyssa
Senator Mark Kelly.
Representative Chris Deluzio.
Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander.
Representative Chrissy Houlihan.
Congressman Jason Crow.
I was a captain in the United States Navy.
Former CIA officer.
Former Navy.
Former paratrooper and Army Ranger.
Former intelligence officer.
Former Air Force.
We want to speak directly to members of the military
And the intelligence community.
Who take risks each day
To keep Americans safe.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now.
Americans trust their military.
But that trust is at risk.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military,
And intelligence community professionals.
against American citizens.
like us. You all swore an oath.
To protect and defend this Constitution.
And right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad.
But from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law.
Or our Constitution.
We know this is hard.
And that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
In the Army,
Our Navy,
The Air Force.
Your vigilance is critical.
and know that we have your back.
because now, more than ever,
The American people need you.
We need you to stand up for our laws.
our Constitution,
And who we are as Americans. Don't give up.
don't give up.
don't give up.
Don't give up the ship.
Incredibly powerful video, especially in context with what's going on. And I also just want to remind people that one of the first controversies that Pete Hegseth has run into since becoming the Secretary of Defense, if you remember, was Signalgate. He was sending military plans in a Signal group chat that he called Houthi PC Small Group, and they accidentally added a reporter, Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic. Here it says the Trump administration accidentally texted me its war plans. U.S. national security leaders included me in a group chat about upcoming military strikes in Yemen. And here are the attack plans that Trump's advisors shared on Signal. And it was a group chat, including the Vice President of the United States. I cannot emphasize this enough, that Pete Hegseth is deeply unqualified to be the Secretary of Defense of the United States of America. He is an emotionally unstable. He is unhinged. He has a history of sexual assault and harassment, and he is over his skis, and now is a war criminal. So to talk more about the legality of all of this story, I'm going to bring in retired it's Friday. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Jaclyn Urso, who also happens to be my sister-in-law. She served in the Marine Corps for 20 years. She was a judge advocate, meaning she was a military attorney. So we're going to talk to her right now about this story. And I have all the story here on a PDF so we can walk through it together. Jaclyn, welcome. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon slash good evening. This is, like I said in the beginning, it is shocking but not surprising, knowing the parties involved, and their disrespect for laws and think that they don't apply to them. So Jaclyn and I were texting on a group chat with her brother, who's my husband, yet again, with another story that just seems completely unbelievable. And I'm just going to throw this up here. Hegseth orders on first Caribbean boat strike, officials say, kill them all. As two men clung to a stricken, burning ship targeted by SEAL Team 6, the Joint Special Operations Commander followed the Defense Secretary's order to leave no survivors. So, Jaclyn, what are your first thoughts here? Just given your career as a judge advocate in the United States Marine Corps.
Yeah, understanding that there's, two pieces of the law. There's the U.S. domestic law, and then there's the international law. And I see this as a violation of both.
Mm.
And it's like, why do we follow the law, right?
Why even have them at this point?
We're the United States of America. We're supposed to be the ones that are the pinnacle for democracy and capitalism and the rule of law and the way we carry ourselves. And this is just just goes in the face of everything that we stand for as freedom and democracy. And why I rose up and swore to defend the Constitution of the United States, against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to support the ideas of freedom and democracy. And it's just like, what was my service for 20 years of me in uniform if, turn around and see the Secretary of Defense now telling everyone to kill them all, just looking at the international law piece, why do we have international law? It's international law is to regulate the conduct of hostilities amongst nations. And we have the UN right after, World War II to try to captivate the international community in a way where war is not and hostilities is not the first way in which we, deal with issues amongst, other nation states, right? And the purpose of LOAC is to motivate the enemy to reciprocate, to treat people with human decency, right? To motivate the enemy to surrender, to make sure that we respect human life and dignity. It maintains basic tenets of civilization, and even in combat, it avoids unnecessary suffering and preserves the fundamentals of human rights. It increases the public support for the operation. It helps restore peace. It's the law. There's a DoD directive 2311.013 that says the law of war, as part of the international law, it regulates our hostilities. So it is incorporated into the U.S. regulations and the rules for the use of force and the rules of engagement. All of that is taken into consideration in these LOAC principles. And the LOAC principles are, military necessity, humanity, unnecessary suffering, distinction, and proportionality. And if you look at it in a U.S. domestic law piece under the ROE and the rules for the use of force, or under the international law under LOAC, it's a violation of both. And I can walk through that analysis with you. I'm just going to pause there to give you a chance to provide me your thoughts.
No, I appreciate that, Jaclyn. This is a lot for the average person who doesn't know what and just, took, high school history or just a basic understanding of the Constitution. None of this seems right. And it certainly doesn't seem legal. And it's comforting, I guess, in a way, to know that it is illegal, that this is a direct violation of our laws in two instances, but it's also the opposite of comforting. It is deeply, deeply disturbing because, in the history of this country, our military has made mistakes. Our country has made mistakes. The people in charge have made mistakes. But this seems like such a clear violation of our laws. And I just want to open this article again and just kind of walk through this here. It says the longer, just in case people don't have a Washington Post subscription here, the longer the U.S. surveillance aircraft followed the boat, the more confident intelligence analysts watching from command centers became that the 11 people on board were ferrying drugs. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave a spoken directive, according to two people with direct knowledge of the operation. The order was to kill everybody, one of them said. The missile screamed off the Trinidad coast, striking the vessel and igniting a blaze from bow to stern. For minutes, commanders watched the boat burning on a live drone feed. As the smoke cleared, they got a jolt. Two survivors were clinging to the smoldering wreck. The Special Operations Commander overseeing the September 2nd attack, the opening salvo in the Trump administration's war on suspected drug traffickers in the Western Hemisphere, ordered a second strike to comply with Pete Hegseth's instructions. Two people familiar with the matter said the two men were blown apart in the water. Hegseth's order, which has not been previously reported, adds another dimension to the campaign against suspected drug traffickers. Some current and former U.S. officials and law of war experts have said that the Pentagon's lethal campaign, which has killed more than 80 people to date, is unlawful and may expose those most directly involved to future prosecution. I mean, this is just, you know, this entire operation, right, that's happening in the Caribbean with these boats already is unlawful. Am I wrong there?
You're exactly right. I mean, under U.S. domestic law, the Trump administration is playing hide and seek with the law. Just because it's changing the mission, like the language of the mission from a counter narcotics to a counterterrorism, doesn't make it, you know, a DOD mission. And now we're at war with the drug cartels. You need an act of Congress to declare war. There's been no act of Congress declaring war. And just because you're saying it's now a counter narcotics, a counterterrorism mission doesn't necessarily mean we're at war with drugs. This is a counter narcotics drug mission. This is a police maritime mission. This is not a war mission. This is a violation of the use of Title 10 forces. Who should be doing this? The Coast Guard under Title 14, primarily a maritime law enforcement mission. So under the U.S. domestic law, we're using the wrong troops. We're under the wrong guys, under the wrong authorities. And then we're carrying out the mission inappropriately. We're violating the rules for the use of force. That's what's supposed to be being used here, right? It's supposed to be an escalation of force procedures where we're supposed to end up boarding the boat, seizing the evidence, and prosecuting these guys. They're bad guys. I'm not saying that they don't deserve justice.
Sure.
They deserve to be punished, but they deserve to be punished under the rules of criminal justice, of the criminal justice system procedures, not just extrajudicial killings. Right. And then if you look at
I was going to say, this just feels like an execution. This feels so sloppy and goes against everything that we stand for. And again, like the United States military, the United States in general is supposed to be the country that sets the example. We're supposed to be the good guys. We're supposed to be the ones that are following the rules, following the laws. Until now, right? I mean, and if you can just maybe shed some light on what we just read here in the Washington Post, the two men who were described clinging to the side of the boat. First of all, the visual, I mean, I didn't even see it, and I can't get the visual out of my head. For somebody like Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, to make an order like that, to kill everybody, I don't even know where to begin. Like, you know, what do you like? What are your thoughts, just as an attorney, as a judge advocate?
It's completely uncalled for. There's the LOAC, right? The laws of armed conflict. There's 4 principles. Military necessity allows the use of force necessary to achieve the legitimate military objective. One, we don't even know if there's a military objective here, right? This is a narcotics boat, and we don't even know if there's evidence supporting that, because some of them might even be fishermen. They might even be illegally, smuggling people into the United States. There's been no evidence to support that there's drugs on these boats. The second one is humanitarian or unnecessary suffering, the principle that dictates that enemy combatants are entitled to basic human rights and that suffering should be limited. It prohibits causing unnecessary injury or suffering to those that are not participating in hostilities. Well, when you've already been blown up once and you're hanging and clinging to the side of a boat, you're no longer taking part in hostilities. And the U.S. has a duty and obligation to now try to save the life of those people who have their lives in danger. Like, it's called triage. And even enemy combatants that are lying next to U.S. service members have to be triaged. At that point, when they're out of the fight, they need to be triaged and treated appropriately. There's distinction, requires the parties of conflict to clearly differentiate between combatants and civilians. Again, we don't know if these were combatants or civilians. And we think that they were civilians because even if they are drug smugglers, they're still civilians. They're not combatants.
Right.
They might be bad people.
It's not like the Venezuelan military came onto our shores and started firing missiles into Miami. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's not what's going on here. And again, like, to your point, Jaclyn, we don't know who these people were. We're just going on. They're pretty sure that that's who it was. But even if that's who it was, it doesn't matter, because these people deserve their day in court. They deserve their day in court just like everybody else. And I just want to, I want to jump back into this article here and just see if there's anything else. And of course, this is so tiny, I should have made this bigger. Just to give some more context here, let me take this banner down. This report is based on interviews with and accounts from 7 people with knowledge of the September 2nd strike and the overall operation. Chief Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell declined to address questions about Hegseth's order and other details of the operation, including special operations involvement. Quote, "This entire narrative is completely false," of course. He said in a statement, "Ongoing operations to dismantle narco-terrorism and to protect the homeland from deadly drugs has been a resounding success." We all know that's bullshit. Going on here, it says the elite counterterror group SEAL Team 6 led the attack, according to 4 people with direct knowledge of the matter, who spoke on the condition of anonymity because of the ongoing sensitive operations. The commander overseeing the operation from Fort Bragg in North Carolina, Admiral Frank M. Mitch Bradley, told people on the secure conference call that the survivors were still legitimate targets because they could theoretically call other traffickers to retrieve them and their cargo, according to 2 people. He ordered the second strike to fulfill Hegseth's directive that everyone must be killed. Later,
Hanging off the side of the boat. I'm sorry.
No. This is a very good point. There's 2 men hanging off the side of this boat that did not die during the first strike. And then it says later in the day, President Donald Trump released a redacted 29-second surveillance drone video showing the attack. The video does not include any footage of the subsequent strike on the survivors. So that first video that was shown to the American public and to the world is missing a very, very important part of the 2 men hanging off the side of the boat, which then were ordered to be executed by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. So maybe I'm getting a little in the weeds here, but going back to the video that Alyssa Slotkin, Mark Kelly, and others put together, gave the straight to camera reminder to people in the military, you don't have to fulfill illegal orders. So if I'm not mistaken, that was an admiral, right, who fulfilled the order. What choice did that person have if they knew that that was illegal? Like, how rare would it be for somebody of that rank to say, I'm not doing that?
I think it's rare, but it's that somebody of that rank that has that much agency within the organization is the one that's going to need to stand up and say that they're not following it. Because the UCMJ, under
Mhm.
Article 90, Article 92, specifically states that service members don't have to follow illegal orders.
Right.
And it's not going to be the worth of a lieutenant colonel, battalion commander, or an enlisted corporal. It's got to be somebody with some agency, with some rank, that's going to say, I am not following this order because it's illegal.
Right.
It's their duty, it's their responsibility. I mean, the UCMJ states that.
Mm.
So those members of the Senate, of Congress, that said it's not your, it's your responsibility to not follow illegal orders, they're
Right.
simply reciting the law.
Right.
That's exactly what the black and white letter of the law says in the UCMJ.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is just, I mean, again, like it's hard to imagine that they would have made that video if they hadn't known something. I mean, they're privy to information that you and I, don't have. The general public doesn't have. Just like the video that was shown to us and the rest of the country about the September 2nd attack only had half of the information in it. So I just want to continue to walk through this here. It looks like this is Admiral Frank M. Mitch Bradley testifying during a Senate Armed Service Committee hearing in July. That's just a photo of him there. But it says in the weeks following the attack, the Trump administration notified Congress that the United States was in a non-international armed conflict with designated terrorist organizations supported by an opinion from the Justice Department's Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel that asserted that because the U.S. was in an armed conflict, personnel taking part in military strikes who were following orders consistent with the laws of war would not be exposed to prosecution. What do you think about that?
You need an act of Congress to declare an armed conflict, first of all.
Are they using like the terrorist angle here to kind of get around that? Is that like they're hoping that that will, yeah.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to do. But terrorist organizations are different than drug cartels.
Right.
And I think we've talked about the definition of a terrorist organization, and I can find that.
Yeah, please. And while you're doing that, I'll just throw this back up here. A clandestine strike. At the time of the September 2nd strike, Bradley headed Joint Special Operations Command, or JSOC, tasked with military's most sensitive and dangerous missions, often working with counterparts in the CIA. Since then, Bradley has been promoted to lead U.S. Special Operations Command, JSOC's parent organization, which oversees elite units across the military. SEAL Team 6, known formally as Naval Special Warfare Development Group, and under JSOC command, conducted the intelligence collection and targeting for this attack and several others, according to two people. The protocols were this is where I really should have made this bigger. The protocols were changed after the strike to emphasize rescuing suspected smugglers if they survived strikes, according to three people. It is unclear who directed the change in protocol and when exactly it took shape. In one October 16th strike, because there's been a whole bunch of them now in the Atlantic Ocean that killed another two men were captured and repatriated to Colombia and Ecuador. In a series of strikes on 4 boats in the Eastern Pacific on October 27 that killed 14 men. One apparent survivor was left to the Mexican Coast Guard to retrieve. The body was never found. So Jaclyn, I don't know if you want to share what you were able to pull up here.
Yeah. First, just getting back to the strike itself, right?
Yeah.
So, counter narcotics is a law enforcement mission. Where was it here? The only time a military strike is legally permissible outside of a declared armed conflict is under Article 51 of the UN Charter, in a situation of self-defense involving an imminent threat or serious bodily injury or loss of life to the U.S., its military, or its citizens. So, first of all, where is the imminent threat to the U.S., right? We don't know. These boats were out in the middle of the Caribbean. They're not that large. There was some conversation that one was veering off, right, to go kind of return back to Venezuela. There was conversations amongst administrative officials that we couldn't even figure out what was the destination of these boats. Trump was saying it was Miami, Then you had Rubio saying it was some other nation in the Caribbean. The administration officials couldn't even get straight where exactly these boats were headed to. And then it was going to be a matter of hours before they actually landed in some place. So the imminency of these boats was non-existent. There
Right.
was no imminent threat to anyone. Here, they declared an armed conflict, and the administration has produced no evidence of the imminency to justify self-defense under Article 51. It was a preemptive strike made in that's not made in self-defense. It was a hostile act. There was no hostile act or demonstrated hostile intent. It was a summary execution for a criminal violation. Labeling of a drug cartel as a terrorist organization and killing 11 civilians on a vessel, which may not have been destined to the United States, as a pretense for national interest, as an extraordinary and unprecedented assertion of presidential power. There's never has ever been in the history of the United States something like this before.
So if Donald Trump wanted to sign an executive order, like right now, saying that all drug cartels, all narco boats or whatever are now terrorists, would that hold up in a court of law anywhere? Or is that just kind of like, sending it into the abyss?
Because the definition of terrorism is the calculated use of violence or the threat of violence against people or property to create a fear and intimidation to coerce a government, civilian population, or any segment thereof in the pursuit of political, religious, or ideological goals. These drug cartel people are not in the business of creating violence or the threat of violence to intimidate or coerce the American government, the American civilians, or any segment or of the American population in pursuit of political, religious, or ideological goals. They don't fit within the definition of terrorist.
Right. And even if they were terrorists, right? I mean, again, like I'm just a muggle here. I don't know this. So I'm asking you. So after September 11th, we knew that it was Al-Qaeda. We knew it was Osama bin Laden, but we still had to go to Congress, right? To get the permission for the declaration of war to go into Afghanistan, right?
Right. The Congress gave the president, didn't declare war. It was the use of military force against terrorism.
Okay.
It was something different, but they did give the president the authority to use the military force against terrorism. And then we went into Afghanistan under Article 51 of the UN Charter, which was under self-defense. And then a few years later, we ended up getting a UN Security Council resolution to change that under Article 39 to continue our presence there to assist in the rebuilding of Afghanistan. So going into Afghanistan was first under Article 51, the UN Charter, under the domestic law that Congress gave the President of the United States the authorization to use military force against terrorism.
Okay.
So political, U.S. domestic law and international law was satisfied in Afghanistan.
Okay. No, that makes things even more clear, right? Let me just actually ask. People have some questions here in the chat. If you don't mind, I'm just going to throw some of these up. And to the point or the question that I was saying is like, could he just write an executive order saying that? And I think he did write something to the effect of, "Oh, Democrats are terrorists now," or anybody like, Antifa or anybody we deem to be Antifa are terrorists now. And so Jen Pollock here is asking, could he name Democrats as an imminent threat? I don't know.
I mean,
and if he did, like, would that even hold up in court?
That's the problem, is that he writes the executive order, right? Because he can't get legislation. He can't govern through legislation. So he writes the executive order, and it's just that. And then it needs to be challenged in court. And then it takes months for the courts to catch up, right? To make the ruling to say that the decision that he's made is unconstitutional.
Right.
Was ultra virus, was was somehow illegal. Well, by then he's already gotten the shock and awe effect accomplished.
Right.
He's already done what he wanted to do.
And he softened the blow, right? Because at this point, people are now used this, to your point, like the shock and awe. People are now like, the goalpost has been moved. Like there's one more awful thing that's happened that sort of desensitizes us from the next awful thing. And he's very good at that. And He does this every day, it seems as though the little man comes over to his desk and reads them the little executive order, and they read it out loud and have story time. And then before you know it, there's this new thing and he does something awful. And yeah, I mean, to your point, then we sit around and wait. And it's the, ask, don't ask for permission, just apologize later or something, and it's like, and he just, that's how he governs, and that's how the entire administration governs. I have another question here from Kevin Cox. Should they not be getting dealt with by the Coast Guard once they are in U.S. waters?
Not even in U.S. waters. On the high seas, we've got the Title 14 that allows the Coast Guard the authority to go out and interdict these maritime the maritime drugs out there. We've got the Maritime Drug Law Enforcement Act and the Maritime Transportation Security Act. The Coast Guard has been doing this for years on the high seas. They've got the authority, they've got the expertise, they've got the training, they've collected the evidence, they've boarded the ships, they've taken this evidence to criminal prosecution, to courts for criminal prosecution. This is not a new thing.
Yeah.
The Coast Guard has been doing this for years under Title 14 on the high seas. We don't have to wait for them to get into the U.S. territorial waters. This has been happening under the U.S. Coast Guard authorities under Title 14 for many years.
Right. Let's see. By the way, if anyone has any more questions for Lieutenant Colonel Urso here, please send them in the chat, and I'll throw them up on the screen. Let me see if I can get through some more here. Where is this question? Let's see. I just want to pull this banner down. Here we go. Oh, I just lost Jaclyn. I don't know what happened. Hopefully she can get back on. I don't know, maybe her laptop died or something. So while we're waiting for Jaclyn to come back, and I will check my phone because I'm sure she has texted me. Let me see here. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to read through the rest of this again. If you don't have a Washington Post subscription, congratulations. I didn't have one. I canceled after they refused to endorse during the presidential election last year, but found through just day to day trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Mayday did get a subscription so we could keep all of you informed, and you can keep your dollars to yourself and not for Jeff Bezos. So going here to the next page. That's one of the problems with the law of armed conflict. The state using force is judge, jury, and executioner, right? I mean, this is the problem, at least, in my opinion, of like what we're dealing with in law enforcement, right? They respond to, a call or something like that, and then they take out, with their own force, they are essentially becoming judge, jury, and executioner. And so many of these really disturbing videos that have, we've all been unfortunately exposed to over the years. But in the next paragraph says, since that first attack, the Pentagon has hit at least 22 more boats, including one semi-submersible in the Caribbean Sea and Eastern Pacific Ocean, killing another 71 alleged drug smugglers, according to officials and internal data seen by the Washington Post. And Jaclyn actually is just here, so I'm going to pop her back in. Hi, Jaclyn. Welcome back.
Hello. Sorry, we got disconnected.
That is okay. It happens all the time, more often than you think. So what were we saying in the moment that we lost you? I honestly don't remember. I was telling people, if you have questions, please do send them in the chat. Okay, here's a good one from Jen Pollock again. Can we sue the government for not allowing us to pursue happiness because I've only ever been able to pursue health insurance? I mean, that's a very good question. I don't know that we can answer that today, but certainly on top of mind for many of us. Let's see. BJG says, question, as a military strategy, are these boat bombings a prelude to a land invasion of Venezuela for a regime change and seizure of oil production? That's a very good question.
Yeah, and I think Michelle and I were having a little bit of a conversation about this before, saying I'd be, willing to have more in-depth conversation about, the ramifications and the rule of law surrounding the Venezuelan, potential strike on Venezuelan property.
Right.
If you want, we can get into that, Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing is, and again, like I wish I knew more about Venezuela. I need to take the time and really educate myself. But Maduro, this is again why they're sort of getting away with this in the court of a public opinion is because the drug, narco people, whatever, not good people, right? But again, shouldn't be taken out by U.S. military drones, right?
Right.
And then Nicolas Maduro, also a bad guy, not a good person. I mean, arguably, I don't know. Should there be a regime change? Should there not be? I mean, maybe you have more insight into that than I do. But again, like he's a bad guy. And so that's again why they're able to sort of like massage this and be like, well, no, it's okay because these are bad people and we're going to take this into our own hands and we're going to be tough. And this is why so many people fall for strongmen, right? I mean, throughout history is like they see these people as being powerful and fighters, but really it's authoritarianism and disobeying the laws that have been written by their own countries.
Right. I mean, Putin's a bad guy. Assad was a bad guy.
Right.
Kim Jong-un's a bad guy. But we've got the UN, we've got the UN Charter, we've got the Geneva Conventions, we've got all these international, organizations to make sure that we try not to have a World War III, and we
Mhm.
respect international boundaries and international states. And with that, we've got to respect the integrity of those countries that we may not necessarily like those leaders. But the definition of international law is a body of rules in which prescribes reciprocal rights and duties of nation states and their mutual relations, which governs generally the actions of nation states and their interface with others.
Mm.
So after World War II, we ended up having the UN to all get together to make sure that nation states are defined and respected, and a nation state is one of that possesses the qualifications of a permanent population, a defined territory, a government, and a capacity to enter into relations with other states. We may not like, Maduro, we may not like Venezuela, but they are defined as a nation state, and with
Right.
that, they have, certain rights.
Right.
They have the right to territorial integrity,
Right.
political
Like it or not.
independence.
Right. Like it or not, it's laws are laws, right? And we all
Right.
have to participate in this order of the world that everyone kind of just agrees to, until somebody doesn't, and then we got a problem. It's just up until now, it really, for the most part, hasn't been us. I mean, again, to what I said in the beginning, our government has certainly made its fair amount of mistakes, but this seems so reckless and so just out of bounds. And I want to go back to this here and see what else we can get through. In briefing materials provided to the White House, JSOC reported that the double tap or follow-on strike was intended to sink the boat and remove a navigation hazard to other vessels, not to kill survivors, according to another person who saw the report. A similar explanation was given to lawmakers in two closed door briefings, which would make sense that Mark Kelly, I guess, and them would know about this, right? So, according to two congressional aides, that explanation has prompted frustration among some members of Congress who say they believe the Pentagon was deceptive in its description of events, the aides say. And there's a picture of a drone here. It says a U.S. Air Force MQ-9 Reaper is what that photo is there. It says, if the video of the blast that killed the two survivors on September 2nd were made public, people would be horrified, said one person who watched the live feed. The Intercept first reported that the survivors were killed in a follow-up attack. This is, quote, the idea that wreckage from one small boat in a vast ocean is a hazard to marine traffic is patently absurd, and killing survivors is blatantly illegal, said Representative Seth Moulton of Massachusetts, also a veteran. Here we go, Marine Corps veteran and vocal Trump critic who received a classified briefing from Pentagon officials on the strikes in late October with other members of the House Armed Services Committee. Quote, mark my words, it may take some time, but Americans will be prosecuted for this, either as a war crime or outright murder. The boat in the first strike was a hit was hit a total of 4 times, twice to kill the crew and twice more to sink it. 4 people familiar with the operation said. In subsequent strikes on alleged traffickers that left no survivors, the U.S. military has also fired multiple missiles to remove boats from the waterways, several people familiar with the matter said. So here's the other thing. So I think we can clearly say now, right, that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has committed war crimes. This is war crime.
It's disproportional. It
Yeah.
was, well, the military necessity wasn't there. It was unnecessary suffering. There was no distinction. It was all 4 of the LOAC principles were violated, and the rules for the use of force were also violated here. That's
Yeah.
U.S. domestic law, and that's international law on both sides
Right.
of the coin. They were both violated.
So I mean, let's just say, like in a perfect world, we have free and fair elections in 2028. A Democratic president comes in, and on January 20th at 10 a.m., Donald Trump, assuming again he has survived the 4 years, signs a bunch of pardons on his way out, and he gives blanket pardons to Pete Hegseth, to everybody in the military, to Tulsi Gabbard, everybody in the administration. Is there any way at that point that Pete Hegseth could be held accountable for committing not just the war crime internationally and with the international laws, but domestic laws and the Constitution? Is there any point then that he will ever see justice?
Well, the pardons only apply to federal courts. So
Oh,
at
interesting.
that,
Okay.
the U.S. did withdraw from the International Court of Justice in 2005, and the International Criminal Court the U.S. doesn't recognize because
Okay.
we feel like we, as the United States, can hold our service members, our people accountable through the military justice system and through the court system.
Isn't that something?
So that is a very good question, and I would have to do some more research to
Yeah,
see
no, I
if
mean,
there's another way.
yeah, we can,
But right off,
yeah, we can come back and talk about this another time. It's just something that I've certainly thought a lot about, especially now that Donald Trump, I mean, he's just been shooting his mouth off all day, and yesterday and the day before on Truth Social. Today was going off at a tangent saying that anything that Joe Biden signed as an executive order using AutoPen doesn't count anymore because I say it doesn't count and he didn't know what he was doing. I mean, it's so unhinged. And the other thing is, thing here is, a lot of people say, and I've seen it, online and on TV and whatever, could he or could any of these people be tried in The Hague? But that's not what we don't participate in that, right? The United States,
correct,
because we can hold ourselves accountable, apparently.
correct.
So is there anybody anywhere that can hold the United States accountable? Because what's the point of all of this if no one's going to hold the United States accountable? I guess it's just no one ever expected us to be in this position, and here we are.
Right, and I'd have to look through the UN Charter
Okay.
to see,
Yeah.
what avenues of approach the international community has through the UN Charter and our rights and responsibilities that
Mhm.
potentially could be withdrawn through the legislative process through the UN. That is a possibility, but I'd have to go through and
Yeah.
look,
No.
look
Yeah.
look through that. But I mean that could be an option. The world can look to the UN and see what they would like to do.
Mhm. Well, that's the thing. It's just as an American, people like us sitting around seeing all of this happen, and we look around the world and we kind of just, I don't know about you, but there's part of me that's like, can somebody come help us? Because we can't count on any branch of our government. John Roberts has essentially led a court that says that the president can do whatever the hell he wants and have complete immunity as long as it's an official act. And I think that there was a line that was used, at least in the reporting, that said he could send SEAL Team 6 into one of the homes of his political opponents and have them executed. And as long as it was an official act, he would be fine.
Right, and I think the
By the
definition of the official act was something like if
It was
he
vague,
can
right?
do it as the president, right? If the president of the United States has the authority to do
Right.
that thing that he's ordered, then it would be considered an official act.
Right. Right. And I saw something, question on war crimes by dump official. Oh, that's that. There's that. There's that. There's another question here that was more political. Here we go. BJG. Why would Dump pardon them? Dump. He can always dangle a pardon, but not pardon them. Why would these idiots trust Trump? I don't know. And like that's a more of a political question, right? I mean, because Donald Trump has pardoned a shit ton of people just in this term, and it hasn't even been a year yet. I mean, it's a long list, and we've
Right.
lost count of people who have committed white collar financial crimes. He was asked about somebody over in Asia that Binance or I forget what it was, but they asked if he knew who the guy was, and he goes, "Well, if you believe this, I don't know who he is." Like, he doesn't even know what's going on, and I think that's a combination of him not giving a shit and not paying attention to what people put in front of him, and also the fact that he's losing his mind. So the second part of that question is, why would these idiots trust Trump? Why do any of them? Why hasn't anybody? And I'm like, let's leave out the 40 plus years before he got into politics. For people like us, Jaclyn, who grew up in the tri-state area, we know Donald Trump, right? We understand who we're dealing with. The rest of the country apparently doesn't and didn't.
Right.
And yet, still to this day, these people still think that, well, if I do this or if I do that, certainly this doesn't apply to me. Donald Trump won't do that to me, but he does. And to quote my former employer who wrote a book about this called Everything Trump Touches Dies. And it's true. It's true. And these people just never learn. Not Mark Meadows, not anybody who works for him. Susie Wiles, I'm sure, is going to be out on her ass at some point. Stephen Miller, all of these people will. And because there's only one person that Donald Trump cares about, and that's Donald Trump. And there's only one thing that, or actually maybe two things, money and power. And I think they're interchangeable. So let me see here. If there's any more questions here. Let me see. Do you think any Republicans in the House will resign after this? No, I don't. I really don't. I know earlier today, Julie had talked about Don Bacon, who's, I think it was is a veteran as well, and spoke up sort of about this Mark Kelly thing, right? He's not running for reelection. He's not somebody who has really anything to risk other than like thinking that he's going to be physically harmed, which is also just insane. Saying that, anybody who would threaten anybody about this, meaning Mark Kelly, but he won't say any names. He won't say Mark Kelly's name and he won't say Donald Trump's name. It's just all vague, all vague. Why does Trump do anything? I don't know. Let's see what else. Can a Democrat Congress exclude war crimes from being pardoned? I think that would take, I mean, that then you're dealing with pardoning power. And I mean, all of that's written in the Constitution from the founding. And my feelings about pardon powers has certainly evolved over the last year. Cause I think that it's, specifically with Donald Trump, it's abused. It's not what it was intended for. And there's like a certain amount of norms and things that people have to confess to and admit to. And like, none of these people are doing any of this. So just to bring this back to the Pete Hegseth part of all of this, on here, it says the Pentagon's lethal campaign marks a significant and controversial departure from U.S. counter-drug missions in the Western Hemisphere over the last several decades. Typically, Coast Guard ships and personnel, this is what you talked about, Jaclyn, personnel have interdicted, is that right? Interdicted. Okay. Yes, that makes more sense. And boarded vessels believed to be trafficking, confiscating the narcotics, and detaining the suspects for further prosecution. Other agencies such as Drug Enforcement Administration have relied on informants and court cases to better understand how drugs flow from South America into the United States. Officials have said the current strikes are carried out after monitoring the movement of boats and people and target suspects only where there is high confidence they are trafficking drugs. I mean, I don't think that I have any confidence that they have high confidence. So speaking a day after the first strike, Pete Hegseth told Fox News, his former employer, he watched the live video feed. We knew exactly who was in that boat. We knew exactly what they were doing, and we knew exactly who they represented. And that was Tren de Aragua, a narco-terrorist organization designated by the United States trying to poison our country with illicit drugs. But in classified briefings to members of Congress, Pentagon officials have not provided any specific names of traffickers or syndicate leaders they have targeted. Lawmakers have said, nor have they publicly released further information beyond surveillance videos of the strikes themselves. Current and former officials within the U.S. military and DEA have expressed doubt, right, that all 11 people on board were the first vessel were complicit in trafficking. That's the thing. It's like you have to apply that to literally everyone on board.
Right.
It could be one person, it could be two people. I mean, what about everybody else?
And where was the imminent threat? I mean,
Right.
this boat.
We can't just say, oh, drugs hurt people. Okay. Like, so do a lot of things. That's not the imminent threat. That's not them pointing a missile at Miami Beach.
Right. There was stories that this boat was actually, veering off and returning back to Venezuela. These two guys were hanging off the side of the boat. There were stories that, the Trump administration couldn't get right. What was the destination of this boat?
Mhm.
Trump was saying it was Miami, but Rubio was saying it was some other country in the Caribbean. And it was going to take hours before that boat was going to reach its destination.
Right.
They couldn't even get their story straight as to where this boat was going. This is a Title 14 mission under the Coast Guard for, primary maritime law enforcement agency, to combat, drug smuggling in the high seas.
Yeah.
You don't even have to wait for the boat to get into U.S. maritime waters, 12 nautical miles. Coast Guard has the authority to do this under certain federal law, already, and they have been doing it. And the Navy would assist, right, because they have certain surveillance and intelligence apparati that assist the Coast Guard, but the Coast Guard's always in charge.
Right.
Coast
Right.
Guard is always the one that's saying, "Hey, Navy, I need you and your assets, your intelligence assets, to do these things, these surveillance things." But the Coast Guard is the ones that's in charge, that's directing and acting, right, on boarding the ships, on confiscating the evidence, and providing the evidence and the people for criminal prosecution.
Mhm.
The Navy is not the one taking any action in these, and there's been no evidence of any imminent threat. So
Right.
it's a violation of U.S. domestic law, and it's a violation of international law.
Right, right. I mean, and that's the thing too. They keep saying this. They keep trying to use the drug. But I heard something today that like most of the drugs are coming in through Mexico anyway. So it's like it's not even accurate. Even if that was
Right.
the imminent threat, it's just not true. And it's just yet another example of this administration just lying through their teeth. Let me just get through this last bit here. Let's see.
Yeah.
Officials have said the current strikes are carried out after monitoring. Did I already do this? Yeah, we already did this page. Let's see. More people on board means less room for drugs to sell, the official explained. Sure. He assessed that the 11 people may have been a mix of drug runners and illegal trafficked migrants. Colombia's president has accused the U.S. in at least one instance of killing an innocent fisherman. I don't think that that's too far off. This is just the end of the article here. It says Trump and the Pentagon said that September 2nd strike targeted members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, but may have not provided evidence to support those claims. In subsequent strikes, the administration has referred to the alleged smugglers as members of designated terrorist organizations, a blanket term. We talked about this earlier, right? The blanket term that lacks detail. It's super vague, and this is what they're trying to use to get around all of the laws. There are also gaps in the videos the administration has released of the strikes. Some show little beyond an initial violent explosion. There has been no public release of a subsequent strike video, and the Pentagon has not fulfilled a bipartisan request from lawmakers to see unedited footage, making it impossible to verify any of the administration's claims. The lack of transparency is a major obstacle to government accountability for its use of force, Huntley said. Really, the only oversight, he said, is public and public and political pressure, which I'm as an American, as somebody who lives and breathes this all day, every day. I feel especially grateful that whomever leaked the story or talked to the journalists at the Washington Post, and I just want to thank also the journalists at the Washington Post for reporting on this story, because it's hard to know who to go to these days for good information and good reporting. There are still some of them left. But the other piece of this too, and Julie and I spent 2 hours today talking, amongst ourselves and to Jeff Jarvis, who's a media critic, about the press's role in all of this, and how Pete Hegseth and the Secretary of Defense has pretty much told the press that they don't have access to the Pentagon anymore. Basically saying, well, we don't know if you're reporting on classified things. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. But we don't have a free press in the room reporting on this stuff. And they're not transparent with the American people or the American press corps at all anymore. And that's really scary. That's really scary, because it's a pillar of democracy, and a free society is a free press. And Pete Hegseth is once again proving how deeply, deeply unserious and unqualified he is to be holding the position of Secretary of Defense. If you look at the people who served before him, all just dignified, smart people. And it's a clown show. It's the kakistocracy, right? It's a government full of people who are unqualified and don't know what the hell they're doing. So, I guess time will tell. My guess is that he won't be fired for this. Donald Trump won't care. Nobody cares about anything really anymore. We'll have to keep an eye on this story. And Jaclyn, this conversation will continue. We started talking about the Venezuela boat strike, I think, back in September when this first happened. I don't think this is going to stop anytime soon. On this Friday at 5:34 p.m. on the East Coast, what are your thoughts going into the weekend after this story has broken?
Well, one, I hope that one day Hegseth and the rest of the Trump administration are held accountable, that we have the rule of law reinstated into American, the American society, both domestically and internationally, and that they are the first example of being held accountable through the American judicial system. Two, as much as we don't like Venezuela and other countries like that, there is the rule of law and the UN Charter and the right of sovereign nation states, and political integrity, territorial integrity, equality of treatment under international law, the inherent right of self-defense. All these things are granted. And we all signed the charter after World War II, and we respect the rule of law, and it's something that is important, for us as a nation. We are supposed to be a world leader, and we need to go back to that. The reasons why we are supposed to be the leader, the integrity, not compromise.
Leaders of the free world. I mean, that's the thing. It's like that whomever is the president holds that office, right? As they say, they're the leader of the free world. It means something, especially to someone like you, Jaclyn, who served our country with the Marine Corps for 20 years. And I've been sitting here at my parents' house, watching the Smithsonian Channel and all the World War II stuff, and Band of Brothers marathon has been going on. And it's, you watch all this stuff, Easy Company and all these young men, and now young men and young women who are putting themselves in harm's way to defend and protect the Constitution in this country. And Donald Trump and the people working for Donald Trump are destroying that. And all of your sacrifice cannot have been for nothing. And that is why the rest of us have to continue to speak out. We have to continue to stand up. and put the pressure on. And the end of that article, it says that there's not much really that we can do except for public and political pressure. That is what we can do. And so if you're watching this either live or after the fact, please call your member of Congress, call your senators, call all of your representatives, and urge them to do something about this. Whether that be to put on pressure to release any of the information, to show the video, anything, make the calls, leave messages. We've done this before. We can do it again. We're going to have to keep doing this every day and every year that Donald Trump remains in office, and then on after that. Jaclyn, thank you so much for joining me. Oh my gosh, we've been talking for an hour here. Jaclyn, thank you so much for giving us your time this evening. Hopefully I don't see you again this weekend, at least on this, but maybe you will. But thank you so much, Jaclyn. You enjoy your weekend. Have a cocktail or not. I cheers you from upstate New York down to the sunny Florida land where you are. Hell of a time, Jaclyn. Yeah. So
thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about such
oh my
important
gosh.
topics. I really appreciate this.
we are so grateful. And I know Julie was feeling bad that she couldn't join, but she's walking the streets of Philadelphia with her family today. So I'm sure she's going to want to pick up on this conversation soon on the other side. So thank you everyone, to the 300 and so people who joined us today. Jaclyn, thank you again. And everyone else, please have a safe, peaceful, and my dad's coughing, safe, peaceful, and joyful weekend. Take care of yourselves and your families. We'll see you all very soon. Bye-bye.
Good night.